Welcome to the 227th installment of Ear to the Ground, the Land Stewardship Project's podcast on family farming, sustainable agriculture, local food systems, and local democracy. I'm Brian DeVore, editor of the Land Stewardship Letter. When a factory hog producer attempted to purchase land in a community in northeastern Iowa's Winneshiek County a few years ago, it mobilized farmers and others in the neighborhood to form a limited liability company. Initially, the main goal of the LLC was to buy land and thus keep a CAFO from being built in an environmentally vulnerable area outside of the city of Decorah in the upper Iowa River watershed. But the LLC's purchase of a particular parcel of land set in motion a series of events that eventually led to the launching of a new sustainable farming enterprise in the community. That's because one of the members of what became known as Hidden Falls Land LLC was Hannah Breckbill, who, since graduating from LSP's Farm Beginnings course in 2011, has operated Humble Hands Harvest. For several years, Humble Hands has been somewhat transient, as Breckbill raised vegetables on other people's land in southeastern Minnesota and northeastern Iowa. By the time Hidden Falls Land LLC had purchased 22 acres in 2014, the beginning farmer was tired of not having a permanent home for Humble Hands Harvest. She proposed to the 14 other shareholders that instead of just renting the land out or retiring it via a government initiative like the Conservation Reserve Program, that the parcel be used as a home base for her operation. Keep in mind that Breckbill was under 30 when she became an LLC shareholder. Most of the other members of the group are quite a bit older. But the other shareholders eventually embraced Breckbill's vision for the land, and in 2017 she moved on to those 22 acres and began raising vegetables. Breckbill, along with her cousin Emily Fagan, have spent the past few years getting housing, water, electricity, high tunnels, and other infrastructure established on the land. They've also planted nut trees and added enterprises such as pasture-based livestock production. The young farmers are also in the process of buying out the remaining shares held by the LLC. Eventually, when all the shares have been transferred, Hidden Falls LLC will cease to exist, its mission accomplished. Turns out, that mission was not only to protect the community from a CAFO, but to show that an alternative model of regenerative, diverse farming is possible. Breckbill and Fagan have made Humble Hands a worker-owned cooperative, and they have plans to bring other farming partners in to manage, for example, fruit production. Breckbill wants to create a situation where when she transitions off the land, the farm enterprise will remain. Just the faces behind the food will be different. I recently visited the Hidden Falls community and talked to some of the farmers and others who were involved in this initiative. While many of the circumstances swirling around the development of Hidden Falls Land LLC and its offshoot, Humble Hands Harvest, are unique, this endeavor could serve as a model for what can be accomplished when a group of neighbors get together and envision a different future for their community. It's also a good example of the importance of responding to a crisis and then following up with a long-term plan once someone provides a little vision to fuel it. The key is to have in place the kind of farmer who can execute that plan and make that vision a reality. First, I talked to Steve McCarger, who lives next door to Humble Hands Harvest, and who helped organize the effort that bought the land it now sits on. McCarger described why he and others were so concerned when the 22-acre parcel came up for sale, and how he and members of the community went from responding to a near-term crisis to embracing a long-term vision for the land.
Well, it's almost 5 years now since there was an auction, a land auction, an advertised land auction for a parcel of land at the end of our road, about 0.6 of a mile from where you and I are sitting right now. And that auction had a number of people bidding on the property, and one of the bidders, and the one who kept coming up with the high bid, was an owner of a hog confinement operation in the southern part of our county. And the owner of the property that was being auctioned was aware of who this person was, and he stepped up and he told the auctioneer he was stopping the sale, because he did not want to be in a situation where this hog confinement operator purchased this parcel at the end of our road, and then whatever he did going forward would put the neighborhood at risk in many ways and destroy the quality of life for people who live in this area. So he stopped that sale, and within a year of that particular moment, at the other end of our road, on land that's contiguous to our property, a widow of a recently deceased farmer decided that she wanted to sell a parcel of about the same size, and she wanted to sell it at auction, which would set up the same potential of this person coming onto our road and coming onto our dead-end road and buying a parcel that could be then used for land application of manure from confinements or the actual construction of a confinement structure. And we just felt that this would destroy the quality of life for everybody in our neighborhood for miles around, not just on our road. So we had to act quickly to figure out a way to keep this auction from happening. And the way we decided to act was to go to the landowner and say to her, you establish a fair price for the property and tell us what you want per acre and we'll buy it for cash. Without really having the cash to do that, we went to her and made that proposal. She set a price of $5,500 an acre, and then we set about talking to people that we know in the community and in the neighborhood who are like-minded about the desirability of confinement, industrial scale livestock production, and all of its negative consequences and externalized costs on our air and our water and our microbial environments and our landscape. We actually did raise $122,000 in about a 6-week time frame, and we bought the property outright, and then we had to decide what we were going to do with the land, how we were going to organize the ownership structure and the planning for what would happen going forward. So we incorporated as a limited liability corporation in the state of Iowa called Hidden Falls Land LLC, and we established a share ownership in this organization. We had 44 shares. Each share was valued at $2,750. We had 15 or 16 families that were initial investors in this operation, and we had an operating agreement with some provisions for how the land would be treated or not treated with respect to industrial agriculture, chemical agriculture, sewage sludge, and other ways in which commodity-based agriculture tends to poison the land. And so, in a way, it was kind of a momentary response to a perceived crisis, which was probably a real possibility. Mm-hmm. And then once we purchased the land, we had to figure out what we were going to do. And what we were going to do involved this group of people getting together and saying, how do we want this land to be used over time? How do we want this land to be treated over time? How can we make it better going forward than it is when it comes into our ownership right away? And how can we transition the land to the ownership of someone who's young and will treat the land properly, and from our perspective? As I said to you before, some of it was serendipity and some of it was intentionality, but we were able to establish something that has true value and meaning, I think, for our neighborhood and for the young people who are coming onto the land to farm it.
A little bit luck, part of it, but also it turned out to be some intentionality involved. Was how Hannah Breckbill was in the community. She'd been in the community. She had an interest in farming and had an interest in doing the kind of farming that you were your LLC was interested in seeing here. Mm-hmm. And so that she was able to kind of be brought into that and kind of start to work on her vision a little bit.
And she bought into the LLC, the original Hidden Falls Land LLC. She became a shareholder, mm-hmm. and that was her ownership stake was the vehicle for her to imagine how she might go forward and own the whole piece of property and create a vision for how it would be cared for and used in production agriculture at a very small scale for basically sustaining the land and protecting the immediate environment.
And so part of this was, I think, which was very foresighted on your part, is that you didn't just say, this is what we'd like to see and what we'd not like to see on the farm. You wrote up a legal document, a restricted covenant, talking about this is what we don't want to see on the land, kind of thing. Yes,
there is a restrictive covenant, and that has to be renewed every 21 years, so it's not like it runs with the deed forever, but it does constrain anyone who would own this land in terms of what they can do on the land or with the land. As a result, it will only attract buyers who have a vision of agricultural production which conforms with our kind of view of non-toxic, small-scale agriculture. That's something that was key from the very beginning and is still key to the unfolding of the LLC and the transfer of the ownership now to Hannah and her own LLC, which is called Humble Hands Harvest. Mm-hmm.
But is this a model or a version of this that could be transferred and adapted to different communities in different situations?
I would say yes, emphatically. I think that the model of community pooling its resources to purchase land and then intentionally and mindfully figuring out a way to transition the ownership of that land to somebody who's going to treat it fairly and responsibly can be replicated anywhere.
Next, I chatted with David and Perry O'Sliva, fruit and vegetable producers in the community who allowed Breckville to utilize some of their land before Humble Hands Harvest moved on to its permanent 22-acre home. David and Perry O were original members of the LLC and feel strongly that intergenerational connections in communities like theirs help make it possible to not only create an alternative, positive vision for agriculture, but in general make their neighborhood a better place to live. David and Perio, we were talking about this situation, this very fascinating situation that you're involved with. You were involved with a few years ago when some land came up for sale. You were very concerned about a CAFO moving in and maybe some other negative things happening to the land, and so you got involved with this Hidden Falls LLC and helped Hannah Breckville get started farming, and now her cousin Emily has started farming on the operation. And there's this domino effect that's occurred, and it's a really positive thing. But one of the things you had talked about was, and I get a sense from the other folks I've talked to who have been involved with this as well, is it really made sense to you as an investment in the community and an investment in not only keeping the land, I guess, beautiful and ecologically healthy, that type of thing, and the soil healthy, and we're here near the Upper Iowa River and keeping that clean, but also the community of people. It's kind of an investment in that kind of long-term idea. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. I think that's people talk a lot about investments, but it's often the dollars and cents kind of investment. But I'm really seeing some kind of multifaceted investment in community. And again, people use the word community a lot, but it often they don't have a specific idea of what is community. And this seems like a really good example of doing that hard work of putting in creating that community, or at least and support. It was a community already, but supporting it into the long term.
So when I think of the community that's being supported by Helping Hands Harvest LLC, I think first of all multi-generationally that when we've been there. I think it's the third Thursday of every month. There's some kind of activity on the farm, and there are children playing and working a little bit, and experienced older folks like me who really can weed a row of onions and get the work done. And then we get all together and have a meal, some singing, and a good time afterwards. So bringing different age groups in the community together, and as I age, it's just wonderful to have an opportunity to be together with parents and kids and middle-agers. So
the concept of having a community involved in one's farm business is inspiring to me. And we talked earlier about what kind of a model this is, and what can make this model work. And I expressed the statement that it takes a Hannah, and a person who has the vision, who, as she says, not afraid to ask for help. It makes it possible for us to invest in her efforts because it involves us as well. It's very satisfying.
Well, one of the things, I think, Perio, you maybe had mentioned this, that it's not only an investment in the community, it's kind of an investment in a way of creating a positive future for the area, in that it's a way of creating a community that you want to grow old in. I thought that was really interesting.
it's definitely a community I want to grow old in, a community where there is access to, for me personally, to be active weeding a row of onions, even though I no longer have my own garden, where people come together on the land to celebrate and appreciate. Another real positive for me, a farm that's diverse with animals and trees and nut trees, as well as vegetables. Yeah, it's a singing community, a place where I like to sing. Yes, yeah, there must be 12 or 14 different birthday songs and 25 different graces. We are rich in song, and that happens partly because Hannah herself is a great song leader.
But one of the things you had mentioned, David, was this idea that once there was the community kind of responded to a crisis situation where this farm, there was a real concern that it was going to be a CAFO, and so people got together, bought it, in a matter of weeks, was able to save it, quote unquote. But then it's like, okay, now what do we do? And we were very fortunate in that Hannah was here, in that she represented a type of farming that fit with your values. But I think you made a good point. It wasn't just that. It was that you guys, because she had farmed on your land, you were able to see up close and personal that she is the real deal. She knows how to farm, and she knows how to farm this kind of soil and this kind of a climate, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we witnessed her hard work and her results. And I personally felt that she expressed a vision for what she wanted to do that was unique, to my ears at least, and made us think how we might be involved in furthering that vision. And again, I'd have to just say that's why. If without that sort of prompting, I'm not sure how we might have been inspired to support this kind of an effort.
Yeah.
So it took that.
Yeah, so it's a kind of little combination of that vision, but also the real practical end of it.
Totally.
Because you guys know how
Well,
hard
we
it
had
can
the
be to farm.
experience over many years, and we knew what it took to have a successful operation. And when we saw it, we could recognize it.
When one is 80 years old, what are you going to do with your time? Your energy definitely is diminished, and you can spend time thinking back. But how exciting to have a young person come with ideas that are right along the line of your own ideas and your own values, and invite you to participate. It's a pretty exciting thing.
And you used the term before, but it's a gift.
Yeah, because an outsider might just see it as a gift that you have provided to Hannah.
No, it's totally a gift to us. We're appreciative of it, of that opportunity.
Finally, I spent some time on Humble Hands Harvest. Hannah Breckbill and Emily Fagan took time off from preparing for the upcoming growing season to talk about why it's important to not only offer up an alternative vision to the corn, bean, CAFO machine, but to have innovative beginning farmers like themselves available in the community who can actually put that vision into practice. Emily, you had talked a little bit about this idea of you came to this area and you had farmed in other areas, and you, through Hannah, your second cousin here, were able to meet folks in the area. But I think that that's important, that it wasn't just Hannah talking about it, but there's like somebody like you who comes into the area. You've been working for other farmers in the area, but that there was that people could, when they talk about a vision, they can see some practicality to it a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to hear nice words about happy things that could happen, but in order for them to really invest in it and believe in it, they have to see that it's happening. And in our cases, see that both of us knew how to do it before we started and had the necessary skills, I guess, to put the vision into practice.
Do you feel there's a fairly strong community of other farmers, not just young farmers, but other farmers who are doing direct marketing, doing this kind of thing as kind of a network type support system? Yeah,
I feel like we have it pretty good here. We get together almost every month, mostly vegetable farmers, but all kinds of non-row crop type farmers, and would share our ideas and talk about what was good and what was bad about our seasons and visit each other's farms. There's a lot of knowledge sharing that happens.
It is interesting how we have this community, this great community of other kind of alternative farmers, you might say. But, in terms of the amount of land in our region, we we're in charge of a minuscule amount of it, you know? And so, you know, just thinking about, oh, wow, when like within a mile of me, there are 3 farms that are doing, you know, good things, direct market things. Like that'll be a culture shift. That'll be amazing.
When these group of folks got together and bought this land, it was a little bit of a crisis situation because they were concerned about it becoming a CAFO or whatever. And when you were able to enter that conversation, Hannah, you were able to not only talk about something that was more of a working lands concept of kind of stewarding this land, but you were, I wouldn't say you were going against, there was a little pushback in that, well, why don't we just do it CRP, set aside, but talk a little bit about how it sounds like you had to maybe make the argument that there is this future that it isn't the two extremes, factory farm or just have it in planted to grass and put it in a long-term contract type thing. So you kind of had to a little bit make that argument a bit.
Right. I knew that if I was going to be able to farm this land in a, you know, reasonable number of years when I was ready to do it, it would have to not be in CRP. I felt weird pushing back against the CRP idea, but I don't need a lot of land to be able to make an economically viable farm that uses more than even just my labor, you know, uses 3 of us in a season or more. The idea that there could be more farmers on the land is also a really like foreign concept to a lot of people. People see 20 acres and they think, oh, that's like a tiny part of a farm, but this place is going to be our lives, you know, and more than even 2 of us, you know.
I like how you said this, Hannah, that as soon as you kind of got onto this land, you started thinking of an exit strategy. And one of the ways you're doing that is through this, trying to create a cooperative type model. Talk a little bit about that and why that, because that is one of the reasons we are in a crisis right now in rural America is nobody thought about an exit strategy. Yeah. You're 31 and you're already thinking of an exit strategy, which some people would say, wow, you know, but that is really, boy, that's, talk about thinking about the community. You obviously love this community and you want to see it continue and you love farming and you want to see some other people have the opportunities that you've had.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, I'm planting trees that I expect to live longer than me, and so I want to be able to be sure that there's a way for those trees to stay taken care of and not revert back to a cornfield or something. Yeah, so forming the cooperative, just kind of creating a kind of division of our business so that my investment in this farm can be repaid if I'm going to leave it, but it's not the entire farm that has to be repaid if just I am going to leave it. And so that kind of gives a means for a new farmer to come in, you know, hopefully in the next couple of years we'll have someone else joining us. And then, you know, maybe in 20 years I'll be wanting to work less or something and there'll be another person to come and start taking my place.
Mm-hmm. It feels really good knowing that there's a way for our lives to change and for this farm to keep going. I mean, we put in a lot of time and love to this spot, and it doesn't feel good to not think about what will happen when we're not here.
This is a great story. I think I'm really excited about it, but I always am a little concerned about great stories that are such great stories that they're unique.
Yeah.
So do you think this is a model or a version of this? I mean, every community would have to adopt it to their own situation. It could be transferred to other communities or at least the ideas cherry-picked and used in other communities.
I think definitely. This is a very unique situation, but the basics, like parts of it, the being like the group of people that want to invest and want to protect the land and the people with vision who want to do something really nice, those are everywhere. The way that they organize themselves and the way that they come together will always be different, but I think that anybody could do it.
That's a good point. You're always going to have those two groups of people somewhere
Right.
if you can find them somehow. But
Yeah, and it's just a matter of getting those groups of people connected and connected to the right piece of land that kind of works for all parties. So there's definitely always going to be kind of serendipity involved, but also I think that it's a totally replicable thing. It takes kind of sacrifice or like willingness to risk a little bit on all sides. Yeah, but these are the times for that. We need a change.
What would you tell a beginning farmer who maybe, is there some ideas, some tips or whatever that you would, to try to get, to pull together something like this, or to, obviously they're not doing it on their own, but to kind of reach out to folks and get something like similar to this, and I guess an alternative land access strategy going in an area that they want to farm in?
I guess the way to do it is to know the people in your community and be in touch with them enough to know if they would be receptive to something like this, and who of all the people around might be, and just being connected enough to know to like begin pulling people together.
I think a key part of our situation was that I kind of had already demonstrated commitment to Decorah, and so people knew I was here to stay, and that's a really helpful thing. People aren't just going to invest in whoever walks by. Yeah, putting down some roots, even if it means having to live outside of a city where all your community is or whatever, is an important step.
For more on this story, see the number 1 2019 edition of the Land Stewardship Letter at landstewardshipproject.org. If you have comments or suggestions about this podcast, contact Brian DeVore at bdevore@landstewardshipproject.org, or you can call 612-722-6377. By the way, it helps us greatly if you can give Ear to the Ground a rating on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcast platform you use. Thanks to Laura Borgendale, a Western Minnesota musician, for Ear to the Ground's theme music. And a special thank you to all of Land Stewardship Project's members who make initiatives such as this podcast possible. If you're not a member, visit landstewardshipproject.org to learn how you can support LSP. Thanks for listening.